Hi, everyone, and welcome to Heal Endometriosis Naturally with Wendy K. Laidlaw. Wendy has spent the last 2 years helping women with various stages of endometriosis to heal naturally after putting her condition into remission. After her own healing success from stage 4 endometriosis and adenomyosis, she's inspired to heal others, and her goal is to help some of the 175 million women know that there is another way other than painkillers, drugs, or surgery. This is the place to be for real talk with real people for real results, so you can learn how to heal your endometriosis naturally. Please note that the opinions expressed in this program may represent options, but are not a substitute for proper medical care. Before starting any new healthcare program, we recommend you consult with a health professional.
Hey everyone, it's Wendy K. Laidlaw here from Heal Endometriosis Naturally, and I hope that this message, this video and podcast finds you well. Today I'm with my amazing daughter, Maxine, who's also my head coach. Welcome.
Hello, thank you for having me.
And the reason we're coming on together today is we've done it before, and I think we're probably going to do a bit more of this because sometimes, you know, we can have our conversations in and out of our EndoBoss meetings, and we can get quite excited about certain topics. I think mainly because obviously, as I've always shared openly and honestly, although, you know, all my endometriosis, adenomyosis, my cysts, chronic fatigue, fiber, all that stuff is in remission. You know, I still continue on the same journey as Maxine does as well. And Maxine has shared, if you haven't listened to her podcast, go back and listen to her podcast when she shared her journey. But the reason that I kind of want the title of this podcast or this video message is questions. And Maxine and I were talking, and we'll share more in a minute, but talking about the importance of asking questions. But and I was sharing with Maxine, I think probably about 20 years ago, I was actually scared to ask any questions. I remember going for this job interview and not asking any questions, and scared to ask questions because I didn't want to come across as annoying or interference or irritation or whatever. And now I go, oh my Lord, how did I even get to that stage without asking questions? So I think it's, again, depending on perhaps your generation, and this is why Maxine and I, we're going to talk about this, is there's this general sense and feeling with women is not to be a burden, to be a good girl, to sit and twirl your hair, be quiet, and be a mute, basically. Do not ask any questions, because to ask questions is annoying. And I know that, you know, you had shared about a little girl, because Maxine's a primary school teacher. I don't know how she does it, but she teaches 23 little 5 and 6 year olds every day in the classroom. And you had a situation with one of your little girls. I don't know if you want to share.
Yeah, it's just exactly with that, with the questions of how, like Wendy said, about wanting to be a good girl or not wanting to make any mistakes or do things like that. So even seeing that in this beautiful little 6-year-old girl who was
she got
worried,
so upset,
she was crying and she was upset because she didn't want to ask questions on how to do something on a computer. It was their first time doing something on a computer and with a keyboard. And I just was so aware of her being worried to ask questions, to kind of get worried about getting something wrong, or and just kind of really looking at, oh, that's interesting why she feels the way that she does. But at such a young age, she has picked up that from somewhere.
Well, the fear of getting it wrong, wasn't
it?
So we were discussing how my son and I, sometimes when we work together creatively, we used to get very stressed when one or other of us would look at something creatively, and then we came up with a cunning plan of duplicating and cloning whatever we were working on before we amended whatever we were working on. So it allowed us to be free to make amendments and play and adjust and whatever on the creative realm. And that's what you'd concluded with one of your little girl, that and I thought this is an interesting theory, really, because if we allow others, and us included, to experiment and be creative and make mistakes, and that can come through asking questions, and the more we learn, the more confident we get, and the more actually expansive we become. We don't contain that stress and that anxiety. So with her,
like you say, looking at how to do that in a way that you can, so for her, it's like protecting that part that's worried about making mistakes or failing or that, and then you can have that backup version, so that she's got that freedom to explore, knowing that that other one is there. So again, it kind of relates into how do you protect yourself in that way to have that support and that.
Well, it's recognizing, isn't it? And even obviously she's too young perhaps to recognize it was her perfectionist part that was at play, driving the whole thing, going, I can't do this because if I don't get it right, then I get it wrong. And then what does that mean? It's the end of the world. So you freeze. And I know I've been there in my younger years, where you just go, like, you just don't want to do anything because you don't want to get it wrong. And a perfectionist takes it over.
And you're right, it is like an end of the world feeling. Like you can see that they feel that making that mistake or getting that wrong
is the end of the world.
The end of the world, and almost end of the world, but that it just reinforces at that little age for them that, well, I can't do this, or
there's something wrong with me. Yeah. It's all these false beliefs. And I think as well, so going back to questions, like, so I think it was lovely that she felt safe enough with you to come to you to share her, that she was stuck, she had a little block. And this is kind of what we talk about in my podcast of, embracing emotions and unblock emotional blocks, and really trying to become curious and an observer, a curious observer of your thoughts and your feelings and emotions. Because if you can observe them and become curious, which of course is asking questions of yourself, gentle, loving questions, not hard, beat yourself into a pulp questions, then it widens and expands, your awareness of something. So at least she was able to come to you, and you were able to kind of ask her, even though she didn't really quite know herself.
No, she did so little, didn't kind of know how to put it into words. But equally, like you said, it was kind of reflecting to her that it's okay to ask questions, or it's okay not to know what our next step is. And I think that's it's speaking, I'm obviously speaking to a little girl, but that's almost like thinking about yourself, is it's okay to ask questions. But as we know, and as we are going to talk about, there are certain situations that may feel more challenging to ask questions in than others. And you can see how this little girl at 6 years old feels that way. So if that isn't addressed or isn't kind of looked at further or encouraged in a loving way, as she continues to develop, is it any wonder when she reaches
16 or
26 that she feels she cannot ask questions and she will just,
or even at 60. I mean, you see people,
I know,
who just,
that's it,
who don't, and that's it. You been able to ask questions. We talk, that's why it's questions, because if we're not, maybe her family sort of to shut up and be quiet, and we're too busy and stop annoying me, and then what does that child learn? To stay quiet, stay in the shadows, and hold in any fears, worries, and anxieties. And my belief is that's where a lot of anxieties originate from. In the work that we do, is what is anxiety? Anxiety is a feeling, an emotional state, which requires more information, and it can only get more information by asking questions. And what stops asking questions? Fear of upsetting or annoying or irritating an external other. So it's great as a teacher that you're encouraging that. So at least in that environment, she knows that it's okay. I know at the same time when you got 23 going, Miss Anderson, that can be rather annoying too. And I know
factor wins every time. So
but equally, when we're working with women and our coaches are being trained, the whole section on how to encourage that gentle questioning, and especially for a woman with endometriosis. Because there is so much information online now. There's just too much information online. So how do you sieve and how do you filter out? Well, again, it comes back to the self-questioning. Through the journaling, obviously. Journaling every morning, kind of like hearing what your inner instincts, your fears, your worries, your anxieties, your stresses, what's coming up for you, and then having a gentle, or creating an internal parent part, as I call it, a new emerging part, which is like, oh, okay, so I hear that this is a worry for you to some part. What would you need to feel more soothed, or what more information do you need? And I think this is where, from an emotional perspective, anxiety, which a lot of women, and I'm sure some men do too, but a lot of women do suffer from, And if you think when a child is little, it has no language up to the age of, 2 or 3. It doesn't have the verbal verbiage to be able to put into words the feeling states. So it's a feeling. It's just senses and emotions that emotions. So there's movement of energy in the body, invariably in the throat, the jaw, the chest, the stomach, where anxiety builds, and that is just needing more information. So especially the women with endometriosis that are going to be going online or speaking to medical professionals or gynecologists or surgeons or doctors, it's absolutely paramount that you ask questions. And I think we've discussed this on our soapboxes, that if you're sensing anxiety about asking questions of the professionals that you're engaged with, and obviously those that are at the very beginning of their journey and adapting and having read the book and starting to make these changes on the 5 Ps, the produce, products, property, people, and past, it takes time to see results. So obviously you've got to ask questions of yourself, your instincts and your intuition. If you're listening to this podcast, you're reading the book, you're in the right place. You're absolutely asked the right question. But there may be parts of you that still need to, get reassurance or whatever. And I would encourage you to speak to your professionals that you're engaged with and say, I would just really love it if you'd support me. How do you feel about supporting me on this natural journey? Now, we've had women who've had doctors throw my book across the room, and we've had doctors who have sniffed and whatever. Is it any wonder that you might have anxiety about asking these people questions? So again, by asking questions, or even the thought of asking questions of these people, your body will tell you intuitively whether that is a safe person. We've talked about this, haven't we?
Oh, 100%. You do know instinctively when actually you feel, like Wendy was saying before, about the fear of asking a question, or the worry, whether it's for shame, whether it's for actually aggression or put down. These interactions, past interactions, may have kind of, like we talked about that little girl at the start, she may have learned that externally from when she asked questions. She might have had a certain thing back. But when you're in these situations where actually you're in a vulnerable position, maybe seeing a medical professional or whoever you may be seeing, and asking a question because you genuinely are interested to get that information for
and you
your
deserve
well-being.
To get that
Like you absolutely deserve it. This is your body and you deserve the answers to those questions. But as Wendy said, if your body is feeling, oh no, I can't ask this, I'll just keep this to myself, that is a sign in itself of,
well, you're
how
not
you're
a
feeling.
safe person.
Yeah,
like
how
that,
you're
you're
feeling
picking
with
up that energy. And it could be a nurse. I've heard some horror stories of people having some really, really horrible experiences, and then just one person being, saying, well, you deserve that, or you asked for that, and just a horrible comment, which is just reinforce this feeling of, I need to stay quiet, I need to stay small, I want to hide, I better not upset anyone, I better not ask any questions. But as Maxine's saying, if learning even just to write in your journal the questions you want answers to, and going in with a notebook, or certainly going in if you're going in to speak to anybody, and hopefully if you're following the guidelines in the book and listening to podcasts and joining the 21-day challenge and all those kind of things, you're going to learn how to trust yourself, learn how to trust what's coming up as questions. Again, if you're going to see anyone, then you take a trusted, safe person with you, for confidence. You shouldn't have any professional, just because they might have a certain external knowledge. They don't actually know your body any better than you do. They genuinely don't. You know your body. You just haven't been taught how to listen to your body. So building up that confidence to just ask a question to get their reflection back, so that you can feel it in your body if there's truth to that.
Yeah. And there's something wise that you've always said, which has resonated with me about truth, is truth feels light in your body.
Yeah.
Something untruthful feels so heavy. And that's, you'll be able to, if you're listening to this, I'm sure you can feel a moment, or like think back to a moment where something just felt so heavy. And particularly for me, it kind of hits me in the chest, where you're like, that does not feel
right.
No, that's not instinctively. Even as I was developing my own connection and continue to do so intuitively, you can absolutely feel when you're around someone that you're like, no, that's not how I feel or how my body feels right now.
We refer to them as kind of toxic people, and I quite like that terminology, because we're not psychologists, and there's obviously different names that are bandied around, and I don't necessarily like to use those names. That I don't want people getting hung up on the names. But you as a sensitive woman, if you're listening to this podcast or you're on the YouTube channel, you've been drawn to me because you're a highly intuitive, sensitive woman. And that sensitivity is a superpower. I know sometimes it doesn't feel like such, but you've just not been around people who have celebrated and appreciated that. And as a result of that high degree of sensitivity, you perhaps pick up on what I refer to as toxic people who are just bullish, buffalo you. They're short, they're angry, they rage. They're abrupt, and they make you feel like there's something wrong with you by their behavior. And this is what goes back to the questions. It's really interesting. I've been having a couple of situations over the past 6 months. And I believe life throws these things at you just to test to see where you're at. Just to see how are your boundaries, Wendy? And how do you value yourself? And in all this talk that I give, am I really walking the walk and talking the talk? Yes is the answer.
Absolutely
yes. That's the answer. And hence why I do these podcasts and why I haven't been on for a while, because there's been a number of different things that we've been navigating. But there are people out there that will suddenly come out the woodwork, as I call about it. And these are insects, I call them, but they're human insects. And they come out the woodwork, they come from nowhere.
Absolutely
and
nowhere.
Suddenly,
no prior warning.
No prior warning. And it might be that it could be at work. It could be an external family member. It could be a friend or an ex-friend or colleague. It could be somebody in the street. It could be your car mechanic. It could be whatever. It could be anybody. Suddenly is, and you'll know when you're around what I refer to as a toxic person, is because it's this force of energy that comes at you. And because of your high degree of sensitivity and openness, perhaps, and again, what we help women do is kind of change that openness to curiosity to allow a certain element of protection. And part of that protection is asking questions. And that asking questions, if whoever it is, it could be a plumber, an electrician, it could be a hairdresser, it could be your gardener, it could be your doctor, it could be anybody. The nicest people that I have met love when I ask questions.
Oh, absolutely
because
love it.
To them, they're not toxic, and they understand the importance of asking questions to lower the nervous system, to reassure and comfort and encourage you to do whatever it is you do. Now, again, this isn't again, you ask questions in a way that doesn't make you feel vulnerable. You ask the important questions, but again, you can really tell a lot by people's reactions. I don't know,
but that's like even what you're saying, you know, is you're exploring in your journal what questions you feel that you still need some more answers to. And I think when, particularly in these types of situations, when these people maybe come out the blue, there can feel a lot of pressure and push and pace, you know, and fast pace kind of pushing that they do because they don't want you to necessarily ask questions.
Well, they don't want you to go slow to ask the questions that will highlight their poor and bad behavior. Which is not for your benefit, by the way. If someone is rushing you, and you're feeling the pressure, is a really good point, because recently there's just been this 2 examples of rush, pressure. And you have to learn to just step to the side of that and hear it and see and whatever the pressure that's coming at you, but ultimately to recognize that you have to go at your pace to ask your questions to get the relevant answers before you feel that you can move on.
And that is absolutely not just okay, but essential for yourself, because like Wendy was saying about how you feel it in your body, you know your body better than anyone, and you will be able to feel that pressure, that push from these people, and also just have that sense of, but this doesn't make sense, or
like what's happening here,
that where you start kind of going, I don't understand, or where's this come from, what, and actually wanting these questions are to, when you look at it, if you've got a nice person on the other end, it develops relationships, and it, you know, they come mutually together. You're both wanting perhaps the same common goal and the mutual respect. So even if it's to do with your body, and you're seeing somebody that is you know, has a label that they can help you with that, your both common goal is to get you to that end point. So for you to ask questions, that's perfectly justified and actually essential
and reasonable.
Because
what they're really good at projecting onto sensitive, thoughtful women, and I'm sure there's men there too like that as well, is that you're unreasonable for asking questions. So when you feel that, remember, that's projection. So if you feel someone that adds to the anxiety. So you'll feel it in your stomach where you're like, oh, this is going too fast. Where's this come from? I don't understand what's happening. And it's aggressive, and they're trying to make you react or rage at you or whatever. Because there's people, that's how they operate for whatever reason. And we can go into this another time. We can offer explanations as to why those people might have ended up that way, but it's not a justification for their behavior. So this explanation, not a justification. It's really important for the women that we work with for them to understand that. But you can really feel it in your body if there's a rush and a push. And if there's a rush and a push, then that's when you have to step to the side. So because they're trying to force you by projecting onto you that you're being unreasonable, when you know you're not unreasonable. You might just be wanting to ask more questions to get more clarity. And as Maxine very expertly said, a nice person will take the time. Like we take the time. In fact, we encourage our clients.
And actually enjoy that almost. Like going,
our clients are asking questions, because I want our clients to feel we care. And that we're interested. And if there's some gap somewhere, we need to know about it. Or if they need reassurance to move forward and move on comfortably and confidently, then we want them to ask questions. In fact, we're always like, hello, we're still here. Remember, ask us questions. Only because I understand, and we understand the parts of them that don't want to cause a fuss and don't want to be a pain and don't want to upset anyone. And remember, that has come about because someone somewhere in your environment has projected onto you that you're a bother or you're an irritant or whatever, which you're not. But the idea of asking questions is to even ask yourself the question, is it okay for me to ask a question of this person? Will tell you a lot, because again, your nervous system, your digestive system, your hormonal system, which of course is all based on endometriosis, will be activated. You will hear it and you will see it. I mean, you've had situations in the past, haven't you, where your digestive system's like, I am in danger. I'm out of here.
Totally. You can feel the cortisol. You can feel the heart. You can feel, digestion has been a big area of mine that always shows up if I'm around these types of people or in these situations. And that's been, again, like Wendy was saying, is your body, you know your body better than anybody. And actually your body is always wanting to communicate in some way, shape or form. And it's lovingly learning through the journaling and through the meditation and through that to connect with yourself. And that absolutely takes time, but you're here for a reason, and you're listening to this because you are already on that pathway doing that too.
Absolutely. And I think when it comes to asking questions, as Maxine's saying, write them in your journal. Have a section at the back of questions I want to ask my boss, or question I want to ask my partner, or my son, or my dentist, or whatever it is you're doing. And even just by writing that down and noticing. Now, if you notice anxiety in your stomach, then that tells you that person's probably not who you should be engaging communications or relations with. Now, we talk about going slow contact and then no contact. But again, just, you go slow and trust your instincts. But ultimately, your body will tell you what someone's like. But just writing those questions down. And again, if you're engaging with professionals or contractors or anyone like that, get everything in writing. So I would, ahead of meeting anyone, it could be for anything. It could be the dentist, it could be the optician, it could be someone doing your wedding dress, whatever. Get everything in writing. And the reason we do that, we say about that, is if there are questions to be asked, don't do it on a telephone call. Do it by email. Get it in writing. It allows you the clarity to think, what are my real questions here? And you can actually tell by their responses how this relationship's going to be.
The responses are lack of response.
Which brings us on to, I've shared very openly over the years, I had an amazing therapist and she retired during COVID. And I'm a great advocate for, like, we have opticians, we have a dentist, you have your car service every year. Everyone should have a counselor or a therapist to keep the cobwebs cleared away. And just to, keep you, we have a lethal weapon in our head.
As we know, it can run away.
We have the monkey mind, so sometimes we need to just need that assistance. So I've been conscious. I have not had any therapist or counselor for a number of years, and I just want to keep all my cobwebs cleaned away. So I've been so you had an experience because your therapist retired.
I'm retired.
And perhaps you can talk about your experience and I'll talk about mine, because this is what prompted this podcast today about questions. questions.
And so it's Francine Shapiro's great book that Wendy recommends, Getting Past the Past. And she's got a list of fantastic questions, and alongside those and questions that Wendy recommended I asked too, I sent out an email searching for a new therapist. And that, you know, again, so this is where it's knowing your power and that it's okay to ask questions. You are filtering these people.
It's essential. Complete strangers who might be in positions of power who enjoy.
But just because they've got that label, that does not come with, as sensitive women that we are, if we had,
it's not a stamp of approval that this person is trustworthy or safe.
No. And
I think there's a danger that we take on when we're little, that any person of this particular title or authoritative position is safe. And that's not the case. That's not real life.
Is safe, is empathetic, does care for others,
kind,
does do
compassionate,
that, has your best interests at heart. Like all of these things we naturally pick up from societal projections and things like that. So that's where the asking, you know, ultimately you're looking to filter through when you're searching for a therapist, to filter through in a way that you can tune into, like Wendy was saying, and like we were saying, is who feels good with your body. So the first step that we both did was email out a long list. So
we figured out the questions first, like what questions were important. That were important. So Maxine had her list of questions. Mine are a little bit different, but on a similar par. Because you're going online, you're going onto the World Wide Web, which is the wild, wild west. Literally, it is. Suddenly, we're exposing ourselves to complete and utter strangers. And they may not be even who they pretend to be.
No.
So your questions.
So there's the questions, and then from those responses to the questions,
you could tell
told so much. So, for example, one emailed back to me to say that she did not know, and the words were, "I do not know how to respond to your list of demands," when it was just 5 questions I had posed. And no heart, no compassion.
Do you think she would have been kind and understanding and compassionate?
Sure.
To the vulnerable parts?
That's the thing. So that told me so much. And then it meant, okay, tick that one off, cross that one out rather, or move on, and we'll see. And just from, I mean, that ruled out a large chunk for me on my journey.
It was amazing how many people didn't respond. How many people were abrupt and rude and almost sounded, you know, those types of people that are like, don't bother me.
Like,
why are you
impatient?
But how dare you ask me a question? Don't you know who I am? And then again, you know, and I know in my experience, I've been flabbergasted that these people are in incredibly important and influential positions with vulnerable people. And I've been there myself, and you've been there yourself, and it's taken us a long time in the past, and obviously you've got a great therapist now. She's fantastic, and I'm still wading through the quagmire trying to sift the pond life to find some glint of gold in amongst it. And I literally mean that. And I'm aghast. But equally, I've learned as I've got older, certain people will gravitate towards certain positions of power to use and abuse. And I know that's going to be really hard for some people to hear, because, again, we're all conditioned by Walt Disney. He's got a lot to answer for. God bless his soul. Because we've been conditioned like everybody's lovely and everybody's like us and everybody cares. Well, that isn't the way, as you'll know by the Disney films. There's always some dark characters in there. And I think that's what you're trying to do, is through the questioning, is to draw out because the questions, whether it's face to face, and I've seen it with certain tradesmen as well, I'll ask a question and I know whether we're going to have a good relationship or not by how they respond to my questions. Because again, tradesmen of any genre, well, you know, I need to know the answers to these questions, and it's taken me a long time to be comfortable using my voice to ask questions, because I've learned there's a phrase, never assume anything, because if you break up the word assume, it means making an ass out of you and me. And I love that phrase. It goes way back to a long time ago. But so the whole point of asking questions is, as Max is saying, to draw out the people who are just going to treat you
Mhm.
like on a conveyor belt. They're going to treat you like a number. I think one of your very first therapists, she was so shocking with you. I was horrified.
It left me open and,
it actually
and
caused more
traumatized
damage.
almost.
She
Yeah.
caused you more issues than trying to resolve. So again, this is why you will know intuitively
Yeah.
by listening to this and by going to your journal, to the back of your journal. It could be the newspaper delivery man, it could be the milkman, it could be the optician, it could be anyone that you want to ask a question of, and note where you feel it in your body, whether that person is a safe person, not so safe person, or a toxic person. You'll know by the degree, and by feeling into your body, then you can ask more questions of yourself.
Yeah.
I think that's what we're trying to say, isn't it? Because there's parts of us, and you've heard me talk about parts before, but there's parts of us that be like, oh, it's fine. I'm sure they'll be fine.
Don't worry about it. That'll be okay.
Oh, maybe I'm being too sensitive. Maybe they're okay. It's me that's the problem.
Or I've just had a long day. I'm just like this.
Oh, maybe they didn't mean it. Maybe they didn't mean to be so rude. No, they did.
Yeah.
They meant to be rude. And you don't deserve to have that kind of treatment.
Not at all.
Because the women that we serve and we work with are beautiful, beautiful souls. And our job, as it's been our job for ourselves, is to help them step into their power, to reflect back to themselves through their journaling, through their meditation, through in nature, you know, through feeding themselves and taking time and their self dates and things, just to really, what do they think and what do they feel, to recognize their value, your value. Because if you don't know your value, then anyone can come on and they're like, if there's a chink in your armor, they may well see that as a green light to come in. And there are some, sadly, like in the fairy tales, there's good and bad.
Totally.
And I think our job, I see our role being, is helping you to protect yourself, empower yourself, not only find your voice has always been there. It's just you've maybe not felt comfortable in exploring it, expressing it, understanding it through questioning. Because questioning, as I say, was just something I just didn't do. I just didn't ask questions. I find that bizarre.
And I do think, well, no.
Because when I look back, I'm going, how did I get anywhere? Because I think I second guessed.
Yeah, and that's almost then becomes like an internal. You're just like questioning yourself almost, and you think about the turmoil.
Oh my Lord,
going on there.
Lost.
It's just
the energy lost for that, and you imagine what that does to your body as well.
But I also, when you were saying about kind of, you know, you've always had that voice, and it's just perhaps learning how to use that. Something that Wendy taught me that helped me so much when I was navigating, trying to find my voice, particularly when my body said, oh, I'm not sure about this person and I don't know, was, you know, practice in the mirror. You know, practice aloud with the tone of voice, how you're going to say it. That really helped me to even hear how perhaps I didn't want to speak as loud or as high pitch. It was just kind of keeping it measured or
as little girl.
That's
or
it.
Aggressive. Because again, that's something that I've got an Embracing Emotions retreat coming up in October, and there's only going to be 4 spaces. So when it's released, make sure to act quickly, but it's these types of things that we'll be covering, actual role playing, because I found that very challenging on my journey to kind of get the pitch right, to get the tone right, to get the measure right, because I'm sure I went from being submissive to aggressive, whereas we're going from like or when we're submissive, that's us being kind of like, you know, oh, you know, you can treat us any way that you like. I don't want to upset you. But that actually causes a lot of internal hormonal digestive issues in the body, because the body knows the threat, if you like. And I don't use that word lightly, the threat of that person or these people who are making you feel that way don't see you in your true light. You're just a tool or a part of what they want you to. So this is the kind of thing that we actually role play in, because as you were saying, speaking in the mirror, recording yourself, you can delete it straight after, but just recording yourself, even asking the questions or making stock statements to protect yourself. There is no army going to come riding along and save you. There is no knight in shining armor. It doesn't exist. The only person, we teach our women to be their own best friend, to be their own knight in shining armor, to develop their own knights of the round table or knightettes of the round table, and to get a counselor and a coach and a therapist and a whole team, including us, to be your cheerleaders on this journey, so that you can, you know, protect yourself, and not only protect yourself, but enable yourself to answer questions so it relieves and releases the stress that's in your body. And a lot of us can just shove down that stress into the pelvis, and it churns away and it churns away, and it causes literally knots in your stomach and your intestines and your ovaries and things. I mean, I do have to say, we continually get emails from the most amazing women who've been through our programs, and they keep coming in, like cysts reducing and disappearing. I don't know if we're up to like 36 EndoBoss babies now from women who were told they would never have babies. So this works, but remember that it's the people in the past. So there's the produce, the products, and the property. That's the easy parts. But the people in the past are the most challenging. And invariably, the past can be living out in the present. And the people that you're around, invariably, if they're not cheerleaders and supporters of you, then just take note by the questions you're asking of yourself. Like, you know, are these, even just asking yourself, are these people my cheerleaders?
Yeah.
Do they really want me to get well? And it can be like a bit of grief that comes from that, because you can realize actually, maybe they don't care about me in the way that I want them to care about me. And that's okay. You might go through different phases and stages of grief, and you recognize, oh my God, I mean, I was swimming in a cesspit of people before who you just used and abused me. But I didn't know that was happening, because I've been so used to that. Like that had become my norm, but yet my body really struggled with that.
Yeah. And then once you started to feel into yourself as to what was your own value, and tune into actually, you know what I'm doing is perfectly, asking questions is perfectly okay and essential, but this person is perhaps not answering them, you know, threatened by them, exactly, and
or
that gives you information.
That's their own agenda, and what's been happening in the past 6 months on a number of different fronts. It's very interesting, and this is what we encourage people even just to observe. Note the observations, even if you're not comfortable in asking questions, because if you're having to hesitate to ask a question, that tells you everything.
It absolutely does. Yeah.
But you do need to ask questions to protect yourself. Or if you are struggling to do it on your own, then seek out safe counsel, seek out a safe person or safe persons. And it may be you have to wade through a number of different people, like we've done, to find the right person, to find that gem of a person who is going to become an additional cheerleader. Again, you're not going to be displacing your power, but you're looking for someone to see, you know, we call it the jewels, the gems, and the treasure that lie within you, until you can see yourself.
Love it.
So that is our chat of the week. So I hope that you've enjoyed this. If there's any questions that crop up, then do message us. We're going to be coming on again talking, what were we going to talk about? There was something else we're going to talk about, which we've forgotten.
About feminine fury, feminine rage, feminine fury, which is which really got us talking.
That got us very passionate. And again, as we finish off here, when you hear feminine rage or feminine fury, notice what you feel in your body. Remember, we're all brought up to be good girls. We're not allowed to be angry or upset.
No.
And we're not advocating taking it out on others, because that's what toxic people do. But what we are going to be talking about, you'll hear our passion, is this, you know, your emotions. This is all about embracing emotions, which we'll talk more about. So we're going to leave you on that hook and hope that you are all well, and keep looking after yourself. And as always, to your health. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to Heal Endometriosis Naturally with Wendy K. Laidlaw, and I hope you enjoyed the show. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and rate us. If you're interested in learning more, you can download your top 5 jumpstart tips at healendometriosisnaturally.com and jump on the VIP email list. Remember to keep you number one, for the world needs a healthy you.